wonderful site. I've been there and gone. In fact, I've gone to some of the mystery plays.
Right, yeah, well, you can imagine me then as a 3- and a 4-year-old going up there in my old-fashioned perambulator and having, watching them clearing the site and building the stuff. And I can remember as a kid playing in bombed-out houses, and as I say, this must have now been 15 years after the bombing raids happened. England took a very, very long time to recover, and it was a scar that kind of blighted the whole middle of the century.
Well, I absolutely did. I'm sure the people in the East End have the same kinds of,
certainly.
Dreadful memories. The Coventry, I think the thing about Coventry that's so painful is the realization that it could have perhaps been diverted, but the larger goal was not to let the Germans know about cracking the code.
Clearly, yeah.
So there was a certain sacrificial quality to it all that's rather chilling, and if you were one of those sacrificed, it'd be pretty hard to forgive it.
And actually nuanced in a British way that you can only understand if you have grown up in Britain and not in London, is that if you're in London making the decisions, then the rest of Britain doesn't matter all that much. And so it is a kind of nuance, because you can absolutely be sure, in my opinion, that if the raid had been planned against some part of London and the code had been cracked, then it probably would have been prevented. But the idea that you could sacrifice one of the provinces came a lot easier to them than sacrificing the capital.
There's centuries behind that, aren't there? Absolutely. So you grew up then really in Birmingham, and you worked in British television, as we said. You worked for
Granada.
Granada, which was, when you went to work there, was really kind of in its heyday, wasn't it?
It was just beginning its heyday, and I don't say that that's got anything to do with me, but I was actually there I got there right at the beginning of the upswing, and I was there through what we call the golden age of British TV drama. I saw the whole span from when it started to when it finished, and it was just wonderful, just absolutely tremendous.
Must have been lots of creativity flowing, lots of excitement.
It really was. I mean, it was working with outstanding people in a way that was, commercially sound, and yet people were encouraged to take risks and, be brave enough to fail if necessary, and it ended up turning out just year after year of tremendous work.
Well, I think where I was going with this whole sort of train here at the moment is I find it so fascinating that you, a Brit from Britain's heartland, are writing what is essentially I'm going to rhyme here, a quintessentially American series. What do you attribute your ability to sort of strike that, I know your wife is American.
Yeah, she is, and it was always a fascination of mine, because going back to a previous answer that I gave, Britain was dull and boring when I was a child. Before the Beatles, Britain was deadly in a way that was particularly upsetting to young people, kids, because the whole message of the country was that history had finished. The great thing had happened already, i.e. winning World War II.
And the empire.
Yeah, although, the empire was basically a kind of a rich person's prerogative. The normal people had nothing to do with the empire. But the idea of standing shoulder to shoulder against appalling odds and winning World War II, I mean, obviously history has been rewritten very dramatically in people's minds, but that was fundamentally the message. It was the finest hour. And I've got no argument with that at all. I mean, clearly it was Britain's finest hour. But the problem was, for a young person to be told that the good thing is in the past and it's all happened already and there's nothing to come, was a profoundly depressing impression to be given. And we all had in our minds, there was all kinds of legends really about America at that point, left over from when the GIs had been around. That, it was this big country, optimistic, energetic people.
Wide open,
unlimited potential, vibrant, exciting, all this kind of stuff. It kind of planted a seed in my mind that made me yearn, that feeling of people on distant foreign shores yearning for America. It really did. It worked like that for me. And then again, in terms of the nuance of British society, to grow up in Birmingham. Birmingham is almost an American city because it is brand new in comparison with the rest of England. It didn't exist at all 150 years ago. It was very late Industrial Revolution city. It has no old buildings. I mean, you go to Birmingham, you won't find 1,000-year-old cathedrals. I mean, forget about it. It's fundamentally like Los Angeles, dedicated to the automobile.
And commerce. I mean, it's a business city.
It's a sort of dirty hands business city where things are made, and things are made to be sold. And if something's in the way, you tear it down and build something else. So it had a very progressive feel, and in fact, historically, it was a very progressive city. You know, it's where free traders came from and all that kind of stuff. So it made you a little bit distanced already from England. You didn't feel all that English if you lived in Birmingham. Plus, my father was Irish, and again, in terms of British nuance, the kind of anti-Irish feeling amongst English made me feel even less English. So I was totally ready to kind of adopt a new country, and America was the one for me.
So you moved here in 1998, and you and Jane live in New York, although I gather you may relocate depending on how it all goes. But
yeah, I mean, we, like people 150 years ago, you know, we steamed into New York. We actually did come on the boat, and that's where we're going to live initially, and then, yeah, maybe we'll fan out across the country like people did 100 years ago.
It's interesting, you know, sometimes when I'm with you, you feel so American, and there are other times when I think you're like one of those younger sons, you know, of empire who was set out, and you're the kind of person who would have been really happy, you know, hacking your way through the African jungle or in Australia or whatever it is. So maybe that's where
it does partially, because you're absolutely right that if I'd been born 100 years previously, I would undoubtedly have, second son, I would have been sent to Kenya or something like that to grow coffee or something.
Or Hong Kong. I can see you. There's a wonderful new book out by John Lanchester, a British author who grew up in Hong Kong, called Fragrant Harbor. And he sends a guy, sort of like you, found England boring and tiresome in the 1930s, got himself a real cheap ticket, got on the boat, went to Hong Kong, and then rode the whole Hong Kong thing right up to the present. And I can see you doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just a restless person, and it's a lot easier to be restless in America than it is in Britain.
Well, and to our advantage, too. We love having you here. And I really love the books. I think most people who read them wouldn't have a clue. This was a British guy writing Reacher novels, because they really read much more like, well, it doesn't matter who we compare it to, whether it's John D. MacDonald, who also did an iconic kind of guy in Travis McGee, but it's so much in that whole American
Well, obviously, I would take that as a huge compliment, and it is the plan, you know. And people say, you know, why choose to do that? Because doesn't it make it more difficult? And actually, no. It seems to me that it makes it easier, because when you write fiction, you're already leaping into this invented world, and so to leap in exactly 100%, so that you're in an invented world where you don't actually live, and that you don't actually know instinctively, makes it actually easier to do, because then you're thinking about every single thing. Everything has to be thought about, rather than trying to graft a fictional action into an environment that you actually know very well. That would seem to me to be very uneasy. It would give you difficulties in terms of kind of matching fiction with reality.
Sure.
But when you're basically inventing the whole thing and thinking about every word, it becomes actually a lot more organic, I think.
Well, you've told me once or twice, you know, you were in this for the money, and at some point you were going to quit. I never believe that, not even for a minute. You are a writer, and I don't think that you could stop writing regardless of what happens.
I'm a storyteller, that's for sure.
You are.
The question is, you know, and I've always told myself stories, always, ever since I was like 2. And now I'm writing them down on paper because I need to make a living. So I will certainly never stop telling myself stories, but we'll see if I, you know, maybe I will start writing them down.
Yeah, this writing thing is addictive. You're going to wonder what to do. I find myself rushing to well, never mind that. Anyway, it has been absolutely wonderful to have you here. I wanted to remind people, not only can they buy this great shirt on your website, but your website is, surprise, leechild.com.
Yes, go and have a look, and it's, you know, got a great forum, and come and join in.
It does, and you look so cool and American in those dark shades. Thank you, love, for coming to see us.
Thank you for having me.
It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, me too.
And as always, it's been a pleasure to be with all of you on the Criminal Calendar. It always is.